Malukaku e pule. E kia kua mana loa, mahalo ia oe no ke ia la. E hui kala mai I nā hewa, a e alaka I mai mākou, ki ala pono I kū ke ola I ka moku. Makai noa, ke keiki, ka makua ke keiki a me ka uhane hemolele. Amen. Ki meni kākou ia hau I pono I, ha? Aloha ia kākou a e kipa mai I ululani hale ma ka iwakīloumoku hale wālama na kulo kamehameha. Well ke ia o manu boy. Welcome this evening to Ululani Hale, the name of this space that we are in the larger Kealaikahiki Hawaiian Cultural Center here at Kapalama campus. Ululani Hale is named for a high chiefess of Hilo, and the meleoli that we offered in the beginning, o Oeia e Kalani Nui Mehameha, was composed by Ululani. in honor of Kamehameha, where she refers to him as the evil bird who will hook together all of the islands under single rule. She was the wahine of Kealaikahiki, who was also very important to Kamehameha in his bringing the islands together. So we are here at Lāhui Rising, and our Lāhui Rising series, and this is the third one we're having this school year. But let me read you specifically our mission for Lāhui Rising. This is designed to create a respectful, safe, and enriching learning space for students, staff, alumni, families, and the community to hear and honor different voices and perspectives on matters of Hawaiian interest for the purpose of education. So that's just what we are doing this evening. We have a beautiful program ahead of us in the next hour and a half or so. Again, this is Ululani Hale. We have our Lumi Ho'opau Pilikia facilities on either side of this room at the exit areas there. Our program will go till about 8:30 or so, and after which we'll have refreshments. We also have Ava in the back there, or Ava Noa. So this is not ceremonial, this is just for us to enjoy and to relax. I'm sure you folks all had a hard day at work and are ready to be really just carried away in Mo'olelo and in Mana'o and Ike. At this time, I'd like to introduce our moderator for the evening. He and I are both among the members of the Ho'okahua Hawaiian Cultural Vibrancy Team or Vibrancy Group at Kamehameha. Please a nice hand for Laiana Kanoa Wong.
Leo aloha ke ia e ka ohana, e belina ke ia e nā kama kahiki, nā mamo a hāloa, aloha kākou. Nui ka hauoli e kumaanei ma kia aina nani o ka pālama, ke kula i ho'okumu ia i kokako ali wahine o kili pauahi, a ho'ohanohano i ka inoa o kona kupuna kane o kahi o Kamehameha. He belina ke ia i a o pākahi a pau. Just so happy to see everybody here, and my tutu is here as well, aloha tutu, and to all of you who are the kama, the mamo haloa, the connected to this place, to this aina, but also kama of Kahiki. And tonight's panel is really going to help us to dive into this pathway. Can everybody say Kealaikahiki? Kealaikahiki. So tonight we're going to explore Kealaikahiki, and this is the celebrated sea road and that access between Hawaii and Kahiki. And our kupunas use this for centuries. And so tonight we have panelists who are going to share their perspectives from all of their different fields of expertise. Some of them have lived it, some of them have traveled it, some of them have researched it, but we all traveled it in so many different ways, physically, spiritually, and today, educationally, to share it to each and every one of you. So really, mahalo nui for you guys to come here this evening. When we say Kahiki, we're referring to more than just the islands of Tahiti. We're talking about our regional homeland. This is our Aina Kupuna. And if we go far back enough in our genealogies, like Pauahi's genealogy, you'll find a direct link between the connections between her Chiefly genealogy and the Chiefly genealogies of the Ohanas in Tahiti, and particularly the Pomare family. And so you'll see that our connections are so deep. And so for us, as we're deepening our connection at Kamehameha Schools to our cultural identity, a natural next step as we deepen that dive is knowing our connections to Kahiki. And so a special night tonight to share and to dive into that. But this panel is an extension of an amazing day that we had back in June. And we invited a diverse group of expertise connected to Kahiki, connected to Ike Hawaii, connected to this pathway Kealaikahiki in so many ways. And we had an all-day discussion here at iwakīloumoku that I swear I could have went to the next day and multiple days because the discussions were so rich, were so ono. And to have this group come back tonight and share that is really going to be a highlight. And there was a momi that came from all of this, and not the momi from the Tahitian Black Pearl, which is a very beautiful momi, but I mean a momi that came from this that will be with us forever, and it's a piece of artwork that we'll highlight and talk about a little bit later on. But really want to welcome each and every one of you here to iwakīloumoku. This is your hale. This is the hale o Kamehameha, Ululani hale, but welcome here to this space. So aloha kākou. As I begin, I would like to introduce our panelists, just really briefly, and then have them come up to the stage, and then we're going to dive in. My mana'o is if we can give you guys more background knowledge about Kahiki, then it'll give us more context as we discuss these questions with each of our panelists. So please bear with me as we do this. And I am introducing my friends, and so I'm going to jab at it a little bit, but so hopefully a crew member, culture advisor to the Dawson Group, and Kaho'olawe Kua and Daddy, the first baby born on Kaho'olawe in our time, my palala Derek Kekaulike Mar. Another amazing Hopulea crew member, navigator in training, captain, and the director, the executive director of Kailua-based nonprofit, Ka'ulua Kalana. Just recently we had an amazing Ku'oko'a Kukanono out in Ulupoheau. Kaleomanuiwa is not just a navigator on the ocean, but a navigator on land, connecting our opio, our community, to the ways of our kupuna. Please help me welcome Kaleomanuiwa Wong. Linguist, translator, and instructor of Hawaiian and Tahitian language at the University of Hawaii Manoa, UH Hilo, University of French Polynesia in Tahiti, and the University of Waikato in Aotearoa, and he used to live in my house in Kalihi, Dr. Keao NeSmith. That was good fun time. Marvin putting over the rascal teenager lion. Unfortunately tonight, our hoa, our tita Kaumakaiwa Kanakaole, she's been holding it down on the Mauna every day, leading protocol with her ohana. She's gotten sick. As we know, the weather has been kind of extreme up on Mauna Kea, and missed her flight and sent her aloha to everybody here. She's unable to be here with us tonight, but we'd love for us to all send pule to all of our ohana. We're all over, everybody who needs pule, and we're thinking about Kaumakaiwa as well. But Kaumakaiwa is just an amazing leader of our time, and the vessel of a lot of the Kanakaole Ohana knowledge, a kumuhula, a leader. She is not here with us physically, but sends her aloha and spirit to us. So let's just give an aloha to kumuhula Kaumakaiwa Kanakaole. And really last but not least, one of our good hoa and amazing leaders in our community here at Kamehameha Schools, Hawaiian culture and language instructor and cultural consultant here with Ho'okahua, and president of the Lala Kea Foundation, and the founder and kumuhula of Kapahula o Kaleilehua, our hoa, our tita kumuhula Snowbird Bento. So as we start to dive into this background of Kealaikahiki, these panelists were all with us in June. And Herman P.E.K. Clark was with us here at Ho'okahua as a kako'o, as a support, but a man of so much deep ike and knowledge and connection to the artwork. And so later this evening, we'll hear from Herman, our creator of this amazing artwork that you can preview right over there, that was inspired by the conversations had in our Hekamanakahiki Symposium. And this is his illustration of Kealaikahiki. And without me diving any further, you just look at it and the kauna, the duality, the richness, the layers that are in that ki'i. We hope that you help to unpack just a little bit, but it's really for each of us to unpack from our own perspectives, from our own experiences, and even from the lessons and things that are shared from our speakers. So please help me welcome Dr. Herman P.E.K. Clark as well. As many of you may know, a lot of people in here are ohana and crew. As we dive into Kealaikahiki, I couldn't help but start with our palala. This is a true koa aloha aina who we lost this past week in a very pu'iwa, quick way that we would never have expected. But this is Ke Aloha Ho, and the ohana ho, if you know the ohana ho, has been such a community and loving and giving in so many ways. And we dedicate a lot of this knowledge that we're going to share to this man who traveled Kealaikahiki so many times, a key member of Hopulea, the ohana, the crew. And he was a true believer in the mission of Hokulea and was vital in the dry dock efforts, in the repair efforts, in the movement of the canoe and the safety of our people and our community, and an advocate for aloha aina. But this is our palala ke aloha ho. If you don't mind me, I'm just going to send a quick pule and think about his ohana, think about all of your ohana who needs this in this time. E pule ka ko e kia kua na kukuna na au makua. Malo ia o ko na po mai ka ia pau. Mahalo no ka pilina me ko kako hoa. Puni I ke koele, puni I ka holoholo, puni I ka piko. He aloha aina maoli no ko kako hoa ke aloha. He leo aloha ki ia I kona ohana, ana ohana a pau ma kia wā I na eha a liu a pono ai ke aloha. Nauno e kia I a malama a kula I a laku. O kono na kia I o ka poa me kia o a mama ua noa. Amen. And as we're about to dive in, we also had with us that day, and we were so blessed to have another speaker. He's kind of hiding in the back, Anakala Garden. Anakala Garden, captain and leader of Hokulea in the very early years. Can we please give him a big round of applause. Garden was with us that day and really showed some very special detail and insights. So mahalo Anakala Garden, and so nice to have you here at Kahiwa. So as we dive in, we wanted to set the stage, but always remembering our kupuna, our aumakua are always with us, and Ke Aloha will always be on our canoe, protecting our ohana as they travel. And so I wanted to kind of paint a picture real quick. This is Kaho'olawe. Everybody say Kaho'olawe. Kaho'olawe. And here we have our Kealaikahiki. Everyone say Kealaikahiki. Now it's not only in Ili, or a part of the districts of the island of Kaho'olawe, it's also the name of the channel. And Kekaulike will touch upon this a little bit more, but I wanted to start to give you some of the context. And this is an image of Kealaikahiki, and this is the pathway to Tahiti. And there's so many stories and riches in our mo'olelo, in our oli. If you know the stories of Lāhui Kahiki, this pathway was critical to the connections to and from Kahiki. And so just to kind of give us a little bit of this background as we're starting to dive in. When the Wa'awhaite gathered on shore of Kaho'olawe, and when they prepared to depart, when they left Kealaikahiki, the Wa'awhaite set the record for the fastest crossing from Hawaii to Tahiti, almost affirming that ancestral connection of the name our kupuna gave this channel, Kealaikahiki, the pathway to Tahiti. It's not just a channel between Kaho'olawe and Lanai, but it's also this sea road and this connection. And we'll dive into that a little bit more. But Wa'awhaite and the Tahitian canoe set the record for the fastest crossing down to Tahiti. Just so we can kind of paint the image, Kealaikahiki has multiple ways, but we're referring to Kaho'olawe as a connection, but this is that route to our ancestral homelands. And we'll try to argue that the knowledge didn't just come from Kahiki, but there was a back and forth. There was this deep relationship, and our speakers will help to touch upon that. This is a famous drawing, and Te Fe'e Nui, of course, a He'e, refers to Hawaii at the center. Now that Hawaii isn't our Hawaii. That Hawaii is the old name for Ra'iatea. And Ra'iatea, where the home of the marae Taputapuatea is believed to be the po'o, or the pu'o kahe'e, and the center of this fe'e that is stretched out, connecting all of us. And so a lot of our maritime connections refer back to this, and we'll dive into that a little bit further. To get a little concept of Kahiki, I would say, try not to call the Ra'iatean people Tahitians. They will get upset at you. They are very strong ku'oko'a in their own. They're Ra'iatea, Taha'a. They have their own names. Kahiki happens to be the main big island that is down here. Tahiti Nui, Tahiti Iki, Mo'orea. But all of these other mo'us kind of ku'oko'a and stand on their own. And it's very unique to see Tahiti almost looking like an upside down Maui, or we're an upside down Tahiti. But these are, the connections are so strong and so rich. Of course, we have Mount Orohena, the highest point on Tahiti Nui, a special place that is so important to our Hokulea Ohana, is Tautira. Can we say Tautira?
Tautira.
Tautira is the community, the lands, the people of this area have hosted our Hopulea Ohana since the 70s, and since the first 76 voyage when Hopulea changed the world. And so a lot of our crew members, they have families who hanai and adopted them that are still in this area. And so whenever they go back, there's always a special exchange. And whenever the ba'a goes, they always stop in Tautira to give their aloha and to spend the time in that community. Here's an aerial of Ra'iatea and Taha'a. Again, Ra'iatea's old name is Hawaii. And Ra'iatea being the po'o, or the head of the octopus. It's a slightly different perspective of Ra'iatea and all of the different passes. And all of these passes are entry points from the reef. And you can see the reef very clear. You can't just come right over the reef or you'll find out the hard way. But you have to come through all of these passes, the Abamoa and etc. And so there's a lot of protocol connected to these pieces, and they're huge and they're very important. So if you don't enter the right way, it can set off an amazing chain of events that if you do the Noi'in, if you learn more about Tahitian mo'olelo, it's a very unique process. You have to do it. Protocol is so important. Of course, their tallest mountain, Mount Temehani, Alena for them, where the Akua will pass and connect. This is that Te Abamoa Pass, and this is Marae Taputapuatea down here. So you have to enter to Te Abamoa and exit in the other Awa. And these are some aerial images of Marae Taputapuatea. And again, this is believed to be the heiau and the epicenter of voyaging for our Pacific peoples. And in particular, at Taputapuatea, if you got a pohaku from Opoa, from this heiau or marae, they call it marae, we call it heiau. For them it's marae. And if you got a pohaku from the marae Taputapuatea, you could take it and open up new Taputapuateas or new spaces on different lands. So it is believed that Opoa is one of those key places. And we have pohaku from Opoa, from Taputapuatea, that opened up Ku'ilioloa in Waianae and Kapukapuakea out in Haleiwa area. So the pohakus have traveled the Pacific and have opened up these spaces. And of course, all of the protocol, all of the hula, all of the oli that comes with it. And when our people travel, when our va'a travel, we always also bring pohaku from here. We always bring the pahu. And culture is shared and exchanged, and we really learn from each other in so many ways. How we have kept certain things, or Ohana and Ra'iatea have moved on. And so when we come back and bring it, it's a unique perspective for them. So it's always a special exchange, but we have these moments, we have these opportunities. And so without further ado, I'd like to bring up all of our panelists, so please join me up here. Please iwakīloumoku. Yeah, yeah, okay. Mahalo nui again to our panelists. Please give them a big hand. In this portion, I'm going to maybe throw a question at each one of them and give them about 5 minutes to kind of expound upon it. They each have a unique pathway towards being here, and their perspective is what we value and want to hear from. And so please don't mind if I give them a quick question and then pass it to you guys. So first, Kekaulike, some of the points that I wanted you to think about and help to share with our ohana. Share with us about Kealaikahiki. It's pilina to Kaho'olawe. What are the examples of ceremony or practices that connect Hawaii, Kahiki, Kaho'olawe, if any, that you can think of in all of your years living on the moku, to even having your keiki there and the inoas that you weave in. And then share with us about Allah, the pathway, and that was such a huge part for our Ha'io'olelo. And don't mind if I have the slides up, but for you to kind of build from and share with.
Two. Yeah. Mahalo Leana. Mahalo for the olive too, by the way. I was like, wow, that olive's a little thin. This one is my kahiki. Mahalo. All right, so Kealaikahiki, right? Like Leana was saying, Keala, the pathway, the road, right? E to or from, and then Kahiki, right? That far off ancestral homeland. So, every island is broken down into Ahupua'a, and then that Ahupua'a broken down into smaller land divisions, Ili, Kuleana, etc. So on Kaho'olawe is actually considered its own Ahupua'a, and then there's different Ili that make up the rest of, all of Kaho'olawe. One of the Ili being Kealaikahiki. So that land district, kind of from the middle of the island, kind of going down towards the west side, is Kealaikahiki. So that Ili is named that. The point that kind of comes out on the far west end is Kealaikahiki. And then the channel outside of that is the Kealaikahiki channel. And just recently I found out that there's a Kealaikahiki knoll. You know that? It's like a little underwater seamount, a knoll. Kealaikahiki. So if you go west end Molokai and you go straight down and then you go Kona and then straight west, you get to the Kealaikahiki knoll. So pretty cool. So for something to be named something, right, in our culture, it has to be, significant, either event or, person or something of that place, right? But for four things to be named something that thing's got to be really, really important, right? So just the fact that at Kaho'olawe you have, the Ili, the Lai, and the Au right outside, all named Kealaikahiki, really lends an importance to the name Kealaikahiki. So if you think about where Kaho'olawe sits in relation to the rest of the islands, right? Hawaii Island to the south, and then Maui all the way up to Kauai to the north. Kaho'olawe is kind of in the middle on the latitude, right? So latitudinally, it's right in the middle or the pico of the Hawaiian Islands. So I feel weird talking about navigation in front of this guy. But so if you think about, if you study stars from like the middle of home, right? Then you kind of get the roadmap from the middle of home, right? If you study the stars from like South Point, right? Then you would kind of know what that's like. But if on your way home, you're a little bit off to the south, you kind of miss South Point, then, you go in Johnston, or I don't know, whatever is to the west of the Guam. Or if you studied the stars from, let's say, Hanalei, and you had that kind of paw in your head, right? And you're a little bit off to the north, and like you miss, Nehoa, then you're, Japan, right? So studying that middle pico latitude of stars from Kealaikahiki was an important thing for our kupuna to do. And, some of our old Kaho'olawe kupuna, their mo'olelo is that the navigators would study the stars from Kealaikahiki because it was right in the middle of our Hawaii Pai'aina. Now, Kealaikahiki too is not just, mentioned in like oral tradition, but it's, it's documented in, a lot of the books, like Fornander and Kamakau and Maro, right, and Beckwith, and they mention Kealaikahiki several times. One of them being the story of Lāhui, and he used to live on Kauai, and then was maybe too wet, so he went to go live Kahiki Nui on Maui for a little bit, and then it was too windy, so then he moved to Kaho'olawe, just as windy over there. But he ended up living on Kaho'olawe for some time, and before he left to go back to Kahiki. So, that the story of Lāhui Kahiki leading from Kealaikahiki kind of plays into the whole meaning of the name Kealaikahiki, right? The pathway to go back to Kahiki. Also, there's a story of Kane and Kanaloa, and they're cruising around and they come up to Hawaii, and the first place that they come to is Kekaulike Kealaikahiki, looking for water to make their awa, right? So that's another story that's mentioned in our kupuna stories. I think Mamo also had a reference of a chief named Kealaikahiki who left from the point Kealaikahiki, and some people argue whether or not that's why they named the place that, because he left from there. But it also goes into and reinforces the story of that pathway back to Kahiki. So I've talked a little bit about pathways, but if you think about kind of like Lana was just talking about Fa'afa'ite, and I don't know how many years ago that was. Seemed like yesterday, but Snowbird says 2. So 2 years ago, we were out there with Fa'afa'ite, and when they left, and I remember sending them off, and saying to myself, how cool is this, that this is the first Tahitian canoe that's going back to Tahiti, from Kealaikahiki, right? Not knowing that they would beat all the records, right? And then, also thinking about the various voyages that Hokulea has made, to and from Tahiti, and that on one of their voyages, they left from Kealaikahiki Channel to go down to Tahiti, and they shaved a couple days off of their previous time. Nowadays it's a little different. Our crews want to start as eastward as possible, right? And that's why the worldwide, when they left Hawaii, they left from Hilo, right? So everything is eastward. But for me, it's my hopo hopo, because Kealaikahiki Point is just the one kind of one on-ramp to the Kealaikahiki Express, right? And then you get all these other on-ramps coming in from Hilo or from, Kapalua on Maui, or, wherever that kind of merge onto the superhighway. And then if you can just imagine this, I don't know who sails or not, but, the predominant winds and swells, if you're heading a certain direction, towards Kahiki, right? They're always going to be at that right angle for your sails to catch the most wind and for you to kind of fly down there. So, just from a logistical sense, right? That term Kealaikahiki for the channel, for the way to get to Kahiki, right? Again, reinforces that notion of that's the pathway, but also studying the stars from the place of Kealaikahiki reinforces the notion that is the way to get back home from Kahiki, right? Knowing where you are, studying the stars from the pico of home, right? And I just want to close by saying, Hokulea kind of, when they first did the Kealaikahiki run, that was the first time in hundreds of years that was done, right? So they kind of broke through that and reopened that pathway, right? But there's a bunch of other, if you think of Kealaikahikis as a metaphor, right? There's a lot of other things that has reopened the pathway back to our ancestral homeland, but our ancestral ike, right? So on Kekaulike, I think this year is 40 years of Makahiki, right? Kekaulike, the PKO guys was the first to kind of bring back that tradition, right? And there's a lot of other people who are working in their own communities to work in their own Kealaikahikis to bring back hula or language or sailing, right? And many, many things. So, whereas Kealaikahiki is a physical place, it is the pathway to and from Kahiki, I would also like to throw out there and offer that it's also a metaphor for the pathway to and from, or to bring back a lot of our ancestral ike, right? If you're just brave enough to chancel.
Mahalo. Pai lima. Beautiful. Well said. Got a chance and break the barrier. Hard to believe that for us, especially like our OPO, this is the reality. Hokulea sales, it's navigating, it's going around the world. But to think that in the 70s, that was just blasphemy. That was almost like ridiculous to think that you would sail without the tools of navigation, without the compass and the sextant and all of those things. It was almost ridiculous to think, that was almost audacious to do that. And the fact that those early warriors, like Manakala Garden Ma, broke through that barrier and went and traveled Kealaikahiki, it's opening that pathway for so many of us. And I see so many in this room who are impacted by that, and all of us by connection. And so perfect to lead to Kaleo, one of our leading young navigators who comes with a strong kuana ike, olelo, ike Hawaii, ike aina, but have also been challenged with learning ho'okele and all that comes with being a navigator, and all of the kuleana, all of the planning and the visualizing, and even the mathematics. Hamani, do your homework, do your hobby, because this all comes into play. But for you as a ho'okele, what is it like to sail on Kealaikahiki? And what does it look and feel like to our people? It can kind of help to paint that picture for us. And you once mentioned at the conference, at our symposium, that navigation involves far more than the skills of the navigator. If you can touch upon some of those ancestral elements that you kind of gave examples about, and maybe about the theory of voyaging stopping. If you could, I know it's kind of three big ones, but let's see what you can do. Mahalo.
Aloha kako. I feel a little inadequate sitting up here with Uncle Gordon Pia Naila in the crowd over there, who's captain from the 76th voyage from the original time in Hokulea has been sailing. But I'm just up here today. I guess there's many other crew members in the crowd who could share with you guys as well. But today is my turn. The feeling of Kealaikahiki to me, it just feels like home. Even from the first time I ever went on this channel, on this Kealaikahiki, I knew that I'd been there before. And you don't get that same feeling whether we're sailing through Samoa or Tonga or Aotearoa or Rapa Nui or the Marquesas even though it's part of our Kahiki that we're talking about. There is this feeling of familiarity as if we're home. We hear these stories and the names of our navigators and the places we come from, and they're recorded in Mo'olelo and they're recorded in Mele. But I think they're also embedded within our DNA and kind of encoded and placed upon our ancestral memory, so that as we're going into these places, you get this feeling that everything is so familiar. It's hard to describe how different it is, but you just know when you're on Kealaikahiki, it's different. As far as sailing as not the ike is not just within the navigator, the person who has a kuleana of being the ho'okele to guide a canoe from one place to another. I would say majority of it is not that person. Not to take anything away from any of our amazing navigators, but I think about myself and having that kuleana to navigate one of the legs that Kekaulike and I went on with our friend Kealoha, whose picture was shown earlier. And to think about me in that kuleana, who am I to do these things that all of these Nainoa Thompsons and Mau Piailu and Bruce Blankenfelds and La'amaikahiki and all of these guys that Kekaulike was talking about. I'm not those guys. And so when we think about how difficult that leg was, that we're navigating from South Africa across the Atlantic to Brazil and stopping off at this tiny little island in the middle of the Atlantic called St. Helena. It's a very difficult island to sail to. As we're sailing to Kahiki, there's lots of islands. There's a big target we're looking for. As we're sailing from Kahiki here to Hawaii is made up of lots of big, tall islands, but the small little island all by itself in the middle of the Atlantic was our target. And as we were sailing along the coast of Namibia, We went through this fog so thick we couldn't see our escort boat, which is just a quarter mile away, and we couldn't see the sun or the moon for at least 2 or 3 days, and couldn't see any stars at all. And so if we had perfect clear conditions, it's still super hard to find. It's like almost impossible to get there. And so they throw me on there, like Huemare, and we're going through these conditions that we don't really even know if we're going the right direction. I remember this one night, we were following the wind, which was constantly changing and swirling around the canoe, not having any swells or anything else to go by. We're following the wind, and finally a small little window of sky opened up, and we recognized one star that we could see, and realized that instead of it being behind us, it was now in front of us. And then thinking, like, we just did a 180 and now we're heading back towards Namibia instead of to the island we're looking for. And so trying to take into account, how long have you been going the wrong direction, and for how many miles, and just doing the best that we could, turn the canoe back on track and sailing along. And we're trying to find this tiny little island, St. Helena. We knew we were south of this island. We knew we had to go further north to get to it. But we couldn't go that way because of the wind. The wind direction was coming straight out of there. So we made a plan that we would tack up further north overnight before we sailed back south to find this island. So we did that. We were going north. The wind started swirling around in different directions, and we could no longer go that way. And so when the sun came up, we had to decide, should we keep going the way we thought we should go when the sun was going down? Or should we turn and go south as what we planned? And as we were making this decision, on this blue sky day, this lightning struck right in front of the middle of the canoe. Yeah, right in front of the canoe. And so we thought, okay, we better not go that way. There's a lightning straight down. And maybe we should go this way as we planned for the middle, before the sun went down. And a couple of hours after we turned south, it was like Fantasia, like a Disney movie where there's fish jumping everywhere, and ahu, and birds flying, and dolphins everywhere. And right after that, the island we were looking for was straight in front of the canoe, this small little island. And had we not seen that lightning straight in front of us and kept going that way, we would have passed the island and have never known we passed the island until we stopped seeing birds anymore. So we think about stories like that. Even though we're not on Kealaikahiki, we're still traveling with our kupuna who's with us on the canoe, and guiding the canoe into these places, whether we're on Kealaikahiki, sailing through these ancestral homelands, or across the world in the Atlantic. They're still with us and guiding the canoe. The conditions we went to actually find that island was I don't even know what the probability of that would be, but that lightning in front of the canoe that made us turn down is the only way we found that island. So, there's no way, at least for me as a ho'okele, could take any sorts of credit for getting the canoe from point A to point B. It's all of those who we don't see who's helping to guide us. I don't want to take up too much time, but I just briefly I would say that I know one of the theories of voyaging having stopped in the 13th or 14th century. I don't necessarily agree with, as we see lots of voyaging happening into the Northwest Hawaiian Islands. A lot of research that was done by Keikaulike Mar, looking at settlements and migrations and visits and setting a ceremonial space in places like Nihoa and Mokumanamana happening as early as the 11th century, but primarily the 14th to the 18th century. As Nainoa often talks about today, and a reason why we sail to Nihoa as a training sail, because if we can get to Nihoa, we can sail to anywhere in the Pacific, whether Tahiti or not. And we know our kupuna were sailing in the 14th to the 18th century to those islands. In an interview with David Malakupihea, he talks about his uncles in the 1880s 80s, sailing to all the way up to Kuahilani to Midway. So we know if they can get there, we can get to all of these islands over there. So yeah, I think it never did stop, but maybe these Kealaikahiki routes have stopped, but our navigational practices hasn't.
For being open to those Hawaiianas. It's one thing to see Hawaiiana and if you don't know what to do, it's almost like it just happened. But you guys felt it, you made the na'au call, and amazing you had that Fantasia moment of dolphins and rainbows and water spouts and all these magic things. Mahalo nui. As we think about the magic and connections and genealogy, we're going to jump to Keao. Born and raised on the Mokupuni of Kauai, the only island not to be conquered by Hawaii. So to all the Kauai, you guys can be only pa'a in that. But you've also lived for periods of times in Papeete. And while Hawaiians, we revere our connections to Kahiki, what do you think Tahitians think about their relationships to us in Hawaii? And we revere this Kealaikahiki, this pathway. But what are some of those mana'o that you have from living there and being there, interacting with the Papeete and Ohana Kahiki? And maybe kind of starting with that.
Yorona tatu paato ini awi marume ini farere mahalo anuirua ke iwi ana ala no kahua pulua. Let's see. That's kind of a wide open door over there. Going Kealaikahiki. Let me see. To answer your question directly, which leads to other points along the way, very appropriate, is the idea that for us today, when Kanaka go to Tahiti, is kind of freaky in a way because they adore Hawaiians in Tahiti. It's kind of strange in a way. They kind of look at us as the kupuna. In New Zealand, it's more apparent. They actually call us tuakana. They actually they could be old, 80 years old, they'll call me tuakana, just because I'm Hawaiian. But in Tahiti, they kind of look at us Hawaiians today as their kupuna, which is kind of interesting when, given all that we have learned in our growing up here. And that is always my experience every time I even go back to Tahiti, which is every year. And if I had a dime for every time I heard somebody say, I'm related to Kamehameha in Tahiti, I would have my own whareni'au on a motu in Bora Bora. I promise. Everybody's related to Kamehameha, apparently. And so you just, okay, mahalo. So you just agree, nod your head, but because they claim it, they own it, because they own us. They keep us very close. And I'm being very specific here about Hawaiians. We get more mentions more than other Polynesians, which kind of makes me feel, we're all kind of, Polynesians together. But I myself have given numerous baby names, all Hawaiian. And my niece is giving birth soon, and I'm responsible for her next baby's name as well. There are many, many people whose name is Manoa, Lani, or something like that. So they kind of take ownership, you might say. They really hold us tight as far as it could be this romantic notion from decades ago. They even think of us in some respects as all of us are equally knowledgeable in this regard. They think of us, you Hawaiian, you must know how to sail from Kealaikahiki. There's this kind of automatic, and it may be, kind of off because it puts us off, right? Because we start to feel guilty because we don't, I think that's kind of fire under our feet at the same time. So I don't, it can, if you're Kanaka and you take your first trip, how many of you have not been to Tahiti yet? Raise your hand, see. You go your first time, try it, I promise. Just as soon as you get to the airport. First of all, on the airplane itself is an experience because they look like us, we look like them. You bump into each other, like, oh, pardon, monsieur. Oh, sorry, I don't know what you say. And they're just as Iwa as we are when we realize that, okay. So there's that kind of excitement, and that's not an accident, it's an excitement. It's a trigger. And it opens doors. It opens doors for communication. They want to take you home, and they want to own you at home too. So, which, if you've ever been that lucky, go for it. But the last time we met in June, and I heard these guys talking pretty much about what they were talking about. For me, what it sparked inside me was a recollection. And the immediate connection that I had at the time was Kekaulike. He was born in Hawaii. And he was adventurous, very much like Aukelenueiku, and so many others, Lāhui and so many others. But we're talking within the islands here in Hawaii. He ended up sailing on his own. He would paddle to Oahu, ended up Kauai, and in this one part of the story, he goes to Waimea, Kauai, but on this particular night was a pokapu at the heiau in Waimea, and there's ho'ailona. He arrived nighttime. He was intending to land, but there were ho'ailona that it was kapu, so he couldn't land. And it says specifically it was po mahialani, so po mahinihina. So instead, he waited for a while, tried to figure out what to do. Then he decided to huli and went toward Ni'ihau. And it says that he arrived where he was going to land at noon, ku kalai lolo. So it was noon. Somehow he's ali'i, right? So he was recognized as ali'i, and he was welcomed by all these people. At that time, according to the story, Ni'ihau was full of kahuna. And the ali'i wahine was Kahelelani. She was an ali'i wahine o Pimpio at the time. The same Kahelelani we refer to every time we talk about Ni'ihau, ali'i wahine. According to the story, she was born Pola Pola and arrived Ni'ihau. Ni'ihau Kaula Lehua are triplets that were born to the ali'i Wanalia, who came to Hawaii from Pola Pola. Gave birth to these three islands as triplets. So Ni'ihau is a keiki of Pola Pola. Kaelelani is a keiki of Pola Pola. So that was all while I was listening to these guys talk this last time. The next part of this, he was only there a few days because that wasn't his destination. He was looking for Kuailani. That's where he was trying to go. So he was there a few days, when he took off again, they gave him piles of everything, kapa, food, everything, to set him on his way. So it says specifically, I don't know who wrote the story, I don't know if it was Boy or who. It says specifically he went Hema, he went south on Ni'ihau Pass, Kaula, kept going. But at a certain point, he turns around and he heads back toward Lehua. So I don't know what that's about. But he's looking for Kuailani. If it's the same Kuailani, we can understand. But why would you go direct south if that's where you're going, Northwest Islands, right? Kekuewa and I have this theory. He pointed me in the direction of that story of Kepaka'ilikula. Kekuewa Kikiloi and I were kind of thinking, we're not quite sure because we tossed around the idea of kahiki. We know kahiki can be a broad term, it can also be a specific term. It can be a specific place, island, group of islands, and can also be anywhere not here. It can be that broad. Well, so is Pola Pola. We have Mea Pola Pola, it's a variety of Hawaiian mea, banana, called Pola Pola. And there's a variety of other types of la'au out there that are also referred to as Pola Pola. And it kind of indicates that was brought here as one of the plants on the wa'a from Pola Pola. So going back to the story of Kepaka'ilikula, he falls asleep. He's apparently by himself, he's paddling. Then he gets tired and he actually falls asleep. So he falls asleep and I guess his va'a is drifting at this point. But he wakes up and in front of him he's close to an island where there's coconut trees, ulu, and there's a campfire with a trail of smoke going up, but no people. And then when he gets close, there's just one woman, old lady, who he feels is a spirit, not a real person, and calls to him to land, and calls out his name even. And so he lands, and then the adventure goes on. The rest of the people that he has to go inside a hale where there are other people, but they're all spirits too. So this is where we're getting this wondering out loud about this idea of voyaging as a dream state, because it entails nothing but your connection with Keapua and your connection with how sensitive are you. How sensitive are you to spirit? How sensitive are you to the elements like this? And once you arrive, ala because that is your final destination. Keala, ala oi, keala ana I kahiki. So when you reach kahiki, ku oi kahiki ala oi. And so that segment of your dream state poem until the next time. So mahalo to you guys because that jogged these connections at that moment. Another idea is going back to the story of Kekaulike Mar is what woke him up is the smell of the smoke and also the plants. So if you go, I'm sure you guys are familiar, you go close around Molokai side, Napali Kauai, especially in the morning, because the mist is coming down the valleys. If you're on a boat and you're going around Kauai, Napali morning time, you're smelling nothing but mokihana, maile, hinano, hala coming down the valleys. And you're on the ocean. And it's a beautiful, beautiful smell that kind of jogs your brain into all kind of directions. So Kekaulike Mar was awakened by all of this scent. Kealaikahiki. A'ala. You know, the fragrance. We don't know if, obviously in Mele and Oli, we play with words all the time. Kealaikahiki can easily be said Kealaikahiki when you feel the urge to use it that way. And you can get away with it because it's in context. So you're using the right context. So it was in Tahiti when I was living there. I went to university there, and I was there Christmas time. I wanted to come home because I just said go home, right? Come home, and my family gets together here. And it was at our family gathering. One of my aunties is the big genealogist. Well, many aunties in my family, they're into the genealogy thing. But this one particular auntie who keeps the records and stuff. We're together. And she goes, you know what I found out? Our great grandfather, because my mom's maiden name Kauhane, but his dad acquired the name Kauhane. So many of us in our families have a similar story. That's not the original name, it was acquired. So we're like, what is the story? She finds out that actually he's not from here. He's from Morea. Jumps on the ship in the 1800s, gets here, naturalization process, like many Chinese families, your name gets changed. His name was given Pola Pola. Why? Because he came from Pola Pola. Until a better suited name was given. And he was somehow, actually he went to Molokai for a while, took on the name Molokai. So his name was John Molokai. And then he kind of, I don't know, family name Kauhane, kind of Hanai him, took on the name Kauhane. So we're Kauhane. But it was during that year I was at studies at university there at Tahiti where this came about. And I'm like, wow. Again, you know. Connections. So how come I'm the only one that speaks Tahitian in the family? I don't know. I cannot explain how come, why I was driven, you know, and drawn so much over there. But these connections, they seem accidental so many times along the way. And it takes years before you realize they really weren't. But I think I'll stop there because I'm sure there'll be other things that we're going to lead into.
Mahalo nui Keao. Pai Lima, beautiful connections with even the connection to Ni'ihau being born of the Mohana Kahiki. And if you listen to their dialect, it's so quick, it's so fast, so many T's. It sounds more like...
It's just like Mopiti. Mopiti, you switch K and T regularly. They say Kako, Taisha Tato, but in Mopiti Kato, which is exactly Ni'ihau, for example. It's just like that.
I love that. Mahalo nui. Pai Lima. Mahalo nui. Snowbird, you and I just came back from Kahiki, an amazing voyage. We'd love for you to share a little bit about the purpose of that huaka'i. What were some of the things that were experienced, and maybe tying it to ceremony, and you taking lead on so many ceremonies and supported so many different types of ceremony, including a Lāhui. Are there unique connections to these ceremonies, the things in Kahiki and in our chants and in our olis that you find that come up today?
Aloha, ali'i kako. Yes, awesome. We're not coming as well from Ikea. Just aloha to the gentleman that went before and to all of our kupuna who sailed and reinstilled in us that desire to be courageous and to have faith in the teachings and the wisdoms of our kupuna so that they could be courageous and step out onto the ocean and go. And it teaches us that we can do the same no matter in what venue, in what avenue, in whatever ala that our lives take. We can be navigators of our own canoes in that way, and also with our people. And so I mahalo that. Our recent trip to Tahiti was about maybe 2 weeks ago. Feels a blur. It was very quick. We took the last route coming in on a Tuesday. And we did all the work that we had set out to do, and we left by Saturday. And so the work that we set out to do as a group from the Ahamoanui is comprised of 4 different institutions: Kamehameha Schools, the Bishop Museum, Polynesian Voyaging Society, and the University of Hawaii System. And part of our work there was to, while we have, as a community here at Kamehameha, been traveling down to Tahiti for some time, and participating with the Polynesian Voyaging Society and Hopule'a down there for some time now. This was the first time that the Ahamoanui was going down for a specific purpose, which was to create cultural declarations between the government, so the President Edouard Fritsch of the French Polynesian president, and through his minister Hede Moana, who is the Minister of Culture and the Environment. Because one of the things that we know for sure is that as people from islands, our environment is the thing that guides us to what we do. Right? When our aina is doing well, we're doing well. We can see the effect of our aina in ourselves, in our keiki. When the aina is not doing well, we're not doing well. And so we push forward to positive change. And one of the ways that we can do that is to create these cultural partnerships throughout the Pacific. And so when we went to Tahiti, that was one of our main goals. The other goal was to touch upon ancestral things. And the 2 ancestral things that we were able to connect with were the kahuna, or the people who have been kahu of Taputapuatea, Marae, their Raiatea, and then also to reaffirm and validate our long-time, Kamehameha in particular's long-standing relationship with the Pomare Ohana, starting with Mama Elvina. And so it was we hit the ground running for sure. Every day there was things for us to do, but we also went down Makaukau and thinking, what are the ways, like the Kealaikahiki and like looking at Kealaikahiki as a roadway or a pathway with many on-ramps and many off-ramps and places that we can go. What are the ways that we can start to exchange ike? I think Layana said it a little bit earlier, where we tend to think of the ike, or the wisdom, coming from Kahiki, from the south, and moving upwards towards us, because within our mo'olelo of how we come to Hawaii, we reach here in our migrations last, right? Kahiki is the piko, then it moves out. But we need to also think about the ike that goes down from here to Kahiki. For example, we know that there are ko'i, or toki, that are made from the basalt that comes particularly from Moivi on Kaho'olawe. But the toki and the fashion of it is made in the Tuamotuan style. It tells us that our kupuna weren't just going one way. They're going back and forth, and they're exchanging. Similarly to how you see during the whole Malamohonua voyage, you see exchanges happening between the Kanaka Oiwi of the places that our canoes went to and our crews. It's the same. Thinking about what Kaleomanuiwa talked about, seeing all the Ho'ailona at Fantasia moment. I can imagine that. Because for me, I finally got to see Tapu Tapu Ate with my own eyes. I've heard about it all my life. I've never gone to this last trip. And let me tell you, it was a very interesting experience. And when you start thinking about ancestral DNA, that is when you start having those, what's the word I'm looking for? When something happens and you go, oh, what is that? Deja vu. French, deja vu. I should have. You see? And so that deja vu, the first time I really experienced deja vu was on Kaho'olawe, standing on the top of Mo'ula Nui, looking over to Kahiki Nui, watching the sunrise, and knowing that my Ohana roots land right there and right where I was standing. That was my first moment I ever had that, and I thought, what is this? This is huge. Or even understanding that what was happening is that the ancestral DNA within me, that's inherent in all of us, was sparking. Why? Kupuna waking up going, hey guys, we're right here. And so when I think about the work that we did in Tahiti just 2 weeks ago, we're sparking ancestral memories, but we're building memories to move forward. And reconnecting our DNA and our people with home, and with the people who are our ohana. And like Keao, I didn't get adopted or anything, but I can understand that feeling of people wanting to just take you in and love on you and give you and feed you and give you everything, and please, can I take you here, can I take you there? Because I had similar experiences when I was just a child in high school, going to the Cook Islands, to Rarotonga, to Aitutaki, to Atiu. Those experiences came because of this place that I'm in, that we're at right now. And because we do have a genealogical connection. Pauahi's line leads to the Nanaulu genealogies. On Saturday before we left, we got to meet with the Pomare family and get our third declaration that talks about just having that ohana connection and validating the genealogy of our Ali Pauahi and Kamehameha and the Pomare family. And they gave a gift. And when we opened the gift, sitting inside this very ornate, gorgeous piece of like a kind of like a kanwa almost, with a top. Inside was their family genealogy. And I was the one that was able to take it and hold on to it for the time that we could finish up the ceremony. And I looked down, and I was like, holy kamoli. In my head, I was like, holy kamoli, this is awesome! But you're in a sermon. But I'm like the crybaby of the group, because whenever something hits me, like in my na'au and it goes like that, sometimes I cannot stop the tears from coming. I'm not trying to cry. Like, it's just, ugly cry almost. But I look down and I look at the names, and in their genealogy, you have Uru, you have Tamaroa, Tamatoa Iopua. These are strong names that are in the genealogies of our own kupuna. Some of us might be carrying those same names, and we might not even know it. And so this is an awesome opportunity for us to not only look at the ancestral wisdom of our kupuna, but to also look to the wisdom that we have today and how we can carry that forward to the generations that will come tomorrow and make it stronger. Because it wasn't, for me, at the end of the day, I am who I am today, a lot in part because of the experiences I had as a young child, as a youth, as an opio, that made me proud to be Hawaiian, that made me want to know more about who I was, so that I could stand with my ohana in different places around the Pacific and know that we all have a place at the table, and that we all have a kuleana to ensure that our environment, all of it, everything about it, all the way down to our language, everything about it, is sustained, and we continue to thrive. Mahalo.
I really want to mahalo each and every one of our panelists for weaving in this deeper connection to Kealaikahiki, this pride that we have in our own culture leads us to Tahiti. When we understand our olelo, we see these parallels, these connections, we see it in our names, we see it in our genealogies, and then when we think about how we got to this land, to what I think is the most beautiful place, but coming from a very beautiful place in Kahiki, and all of the courage, all of the wisdom, all of the ike, that wasn't just ike passed on, but it was also the magic that the whole keles and the crew had to weave together to get to our homeland and to remember our people, Kanaloa, Kaho'olawe, here in the Pai'aina. And what were some of the first sights when you hear the chants of Mo'ikea? The first place they see were like Mauna Kea. They see these tall mountains, Haleakala. And so when it's captured in Oli, that was our kupuna's way of capturing Mo'olelo of that time. And today, we have way different forms of capturing Mo'olelo, capturing stories, capturing these images that only these experiences can really bring out. And so I'd really be honored to bring up Herman Pi'ikea Clark, who helped to capture this Mo'olelo of Kealaikahiki through an amazing piece of artwork. And so may we please give a big hand to Herman Pi'ikea Clark, who's going to come up and share a little bit about this Kealaikahiki.
Sorry. I was charged with the challenge and the privilege of giving an image to the word Kealaikahiki. It was a privilege to listen, a privilege to work with his team, privilege to consider the range and breadth of ideas, and challenge to try and put it into some kind of coherent form. And thus is the challenge that an artist and a designer undertakes when they accept projects of this nature. I'm not going to take all of the points, but I think I'll just illustrate a few of the central ideas that I thought, after listening to everyone speak, after doing my own research, that I thought was important, essential to capture. And you would have seen in an earlier slide the image of the octopus, the He'e'inui, That was a map drawn in the early 20th century. There were actually two drawings, two maps of the Pacific drawn by Titwila Henry and Te Rangihiroa Soki the Buck, both of whom were attempting to give an image to the relationship between La'iatea and more specifically Taputapuatea and the rest of the Pacific, to see that connection. And they used the metaphor of the fe'e to undertake that, and there was a purpose in that. So for me, that seemed to be a very, very, very important visual character, visual element to include in this work. Only in this case, we were just talking about Kealaikahiki. We were just really focusing upon the relationship between Hawaii and Kahiki. And so for me, it was the moment in which that fe'e was reaching out, that moment in which it was, we've all seen images of the fe'e reaching out and grabbing a crab or something out there, but that was the motion that I really wanted to capture. It was that very, very essential, basic move in which it reached out and grabbed. Because I thought that's what was going on. It was going on a long time ago, and it's going on right now. And so hence, that moment is what I was really trying to get to. Another element that I felt was really important, which the panel was discussing, and that was the on-ramps and off-ramps of Kealaikahiki. And I thought that was just a really marvelous, innovative way to think about this channel or this pathway. Growing up in Hawaii and growing up in the age of Hokulea, we always knew about Kealaikahiki, and I just thought of it as a literal translation until this panel challenged that and overturned that. And so, for me, these as much illustrate that idea of the multiple pathways. Now, I'm an old World War II movie buff, and I particularly really like those David Niven movies where the searchlight is, going out and beaming out and, searching across for the escaped British prisoners. And I just couldn't help but think about it that way as both destinations, both sides were reaching out and trying to find each other in a sense and illuminating that path. We've heard from Keao talking about that relationship from the Tahitians to us and Maori to us. Well, likewise, I would say from us, it's it's a very similar kind of wish to be connected. And so, to me, that interpretation or that wish to find you, while the squid was reaching out, we're trying to find our way home, find our way back home. I've lived for 20 years. I've been very privileged to live for 20 years in New Zealand. I've been an academic there for about 20 years, and I now say to to people, I leave home to go home, and I leave home to go back home. And so, in a very real sense, that's when I think of those travelers from hundreds of years ago who were crossing this, using this pathway. I understand that sensation, I think, of going back home to go home. last elements that I just want to talk about. I just don't want to bore you with too much, but the last element is this one here. And I developed a font, a letter form or a font for this project. I called the letter form Lāhui, and used the font to write the term Kekaulike as the equator. We had a really very, very poignant and profound discussion about Kekaulike from none other than Nainoa Thompson, who described it as a place that we all need to go to, a place where will be challenged, where the world will be different. It's the place that will, out of that space, we emerge innovators, having to challenge ourselves to question our conventions, to find a way home. And so, how do you give vision to that? How do you tangibly interpret that sort of different challenging words? And so I used color forms, I used shapes, I used other elements that were somewhat different than the organic shape of the squid to describe this space as a different space, a space that about innovation, about challenge and innovation that we, as Hawaiians into the 21st century, perhaps are best challenged by. I had to find our way. Now, did you want to talk about the creative process? Did you want me to talk a little bit? Yeah. When we do art, as Pacific Islanders, as Polynesians, as Hawaiians, we've been somewhat conditioned by that term from the context, colonial context that we're in. And I've been working on trying to look back, much like all of the panel members here, into my own field. And for those students, for those of you here who are thinking about creative process, I found a wonderful olelo that might be of poignancy here. The olelo is from the island of Kauai, and it goes something like this: Ho'olo'olohi wainiki, kauhale o Limaloa. Limaloa was the god of mirage. And in the early hours, according to this olelo, in the early hours of the morning, Limaloa would build imaginary kauhale over the desolate plains of Mana. And as the sun of the morning crested the horizon, Limaloa would allow the mirage to disappear in the morning. Now, according to Pukui, the olelo was about, Limaloa's work was about putting things into order, giving some kind of understanding to ideas that were too difficult. The process of making models, or in a sense, making a piece of artwork, was a way of helping us to come to some understanding about a very difficult idea. And the important part of that olelo, when the sun crested the horizon, in other words, when we came to some understanding, what was most important was the understanding, rather than the object that was created. Well, the object that's created is important, and it was the idea. And so I want to acknowledge the panelists tonight, and of course, the members of Moananui for organizing and putting this all together. For me, this process was an ongoing one. I'm still working on it. I'm still trying to work. It's definitely opened up ideas for me, and I know there's more to go. But the most important thing was the idea that it sparks. And hopefully the discussions tonight has helped you to spark on your own thoughts about Kealaikahiki. And that's the most important thing. Well, it's nice to have a nice object. The most important thing is to have the idea. So I want to thank you. Thank all members of the panel. There's nothing much more I could add beyond the brilliance that they gave. Only my wacky little stories about design. So with that, I'll leave you. But thank you very much.
Well, we have our Pai Lima again for Herman P.K. Clark's Kealaikahiki rendition. A form of the story. And as we have one of the lead captains of our first voyage to Tahiti, we'd like to ask Anakala Gordon Pia Naia, longtime Hopulea crew member. He was supposed to be on this panel, and we're so happy that he's still able to make it tonight. So if we could ask you, Anakala, would it be okay to ask you to share a little bit? Mahalo.
Sorry, so good. Yeah, I guess every day you can learn something new. Aloha mai kako. Mahalo panelists. I think it's important that this ongoing research continues, and the more we find out, the richer it will be. I basically came, and I'm sorry I didn't make that meeting last time because I was with this guy's Sir Moko Mead, Aroha Mead's father, who was here. He brought his wife's ashes, and we had a big exchange and service for her out at Windward Community College, which I had to be there because I stayed with the Meads when I was down in Aotearoa. And likewise, I stayed with the Pomares as a young man. Narcissus Pomare. I thought I would marry her, but I was kind of young and she was about 20 years older than me. I am a Kamehameha graduate, lots of, that doesn't matter. I am a Kamehameha graduate. And, I see somebody who was a student, a couple guys, three people who were students here when I was working at Kamehameha. My involvement was unexpected, but I've always had this love for Kealaikahiki. And I brought this for P.E. because I was really interested in the fe'e thing that he was doing, and we've talked about it because one of the early books that my father graced me with was the Vikings of the Pacific, called The Sunrise. And that was by Te Rangi Hiroa, Peter Buck, who used to be down, he was the director at the Bishop Museum. I believe firmly that if you get a chance, read his stuff. He was just an amazing, I'm going to be proud, I'm going to say, he was an amazing Polynesian. Just not an amazing Maori, he was an amazing Polynesian. And read the letters that he wrote. Boy, it's fantastic. So the two Maoris that I grew up with that were honored by Hawaii certainly was Sir Peter Buck, Te Rangi Hiroa. There's a street named after him, and the other one was a guy that was out at PCC, Uncle Tami Taurima, who was the first director of the Polynesian Cultural Center out there, and an amazing man. His music was amazing, and so I have a lot of love for these people. But in the Vikings of the Sunrise, there was that he'e that he drew, and I just, it was like a magnet to me because I like to do poke and I'll be honest with you, at that age, that drawing was more important than the words in his book, and over the years I've had to go back to read it. But anyway, being at Kamehameha, I was fortunate because in 1976, on the first voyage, Maupiailu, the great Sarawali's man, he was just not a navigator, he was really important to his community, left the project and went back home. So I'm sitting around home and I get 3 phone calls the same afternoon, and basically they were all asking me if I would bring Hokulea back home. My background is I have a unlimited ocean license, master's license to sail any vessel, any tonnage in the ocean. I'm also have a master's sail license for sail. So for 2 years I worked a schooner out of Lahaina in the roadsteads, 3 of us, and it was a great time of my life. And we sailed all those areas around Lanai, Kaho'olawe, and Molokini, and I think in 2 years we had 1 day off from sailing, but you learn a lot about the area itself. But in 1976, I was asked if I would go down and bring Hokulea back home. And I thought nothing of it. It was certainly a challenge, but I've been sailing all my life. I grew up on a sailboat. When I was in Kamehameha, the Kamehameha schools had a schooner called the Manuiwa. Yeah. And the captain of the Manuiwa was my father. And my father was also a Hawaiian language teacher here in the 50s. Yeah, so I had all these great people, and I lived at the Bishop Museum grounds, so that was my library. Lahi Webb and all those great minds down there. But anyway, I did go down, and Nainoa was on a crew, and Kimulaman and I flew down, and we safely returned home to Hawaii. And of course, they always point out that we did it using instruments. Well, you know, instruments is still a form of navigation. But the proud part about that voyage home was that I had Hine on the canoe, and one was Ani Raina, who had passed away, and Punho at Kauai Wahine, and the other was Penny Martin from Molokai, a Kamehameha graduate. So I felt very proud as a Kamehameha person to be part of this project. Let me read you just the opening part of this project was involved in. I don't want to take up the time, you know. I know these little girls got to go home. We cannot escape the impact of Hokulea upon us now that the reenactment of an ancient voyage has been completed. It does not definitively prove that such voyages were made, but it does show the possibilities of them being accomplished in the past. If we can realize the role of the Polynesian in the Pacific, then we can surely see that such voyages were within his capabilities. If we could somehow measure his abilities, then perhaps we would better appreciate the Polynesian and his canoe in his Pacific realm. As long as we think in Western ways, we will not fully appreciate the Polynesian in the Pacific, and there will always be those who doubt. Anyway, I go on, and I put together this project, and it was part of it. I was driven because when Hokulea left Hawaii to go south, instead of going down Kealaikahiki or run on the southerly roadway, they departed Maui and went around the west end and from Honolulu Bay going up. And they took about 3 days to clear the northern part of Maui and the big island of Mokuokeawe. And as a sailor, as a seaman, as a guy who's been out there quite often, I said that was not a prudent way to depart the Hawaiian Islands. One, you're putting yourself into the kind of conditions you don't want to get into. You're beating your head against the wind and the seas. You're taking this brand new vessel, a canoe, and you're putting her into some pretty rough conditions, not giving her the opportunity to stretch her aha and all the things that put her together. And I thought that was Ben Finney did something that I think he sort of shunned what could have been done, and that was to include what mo'olelos we have and traditions we have, and take the canoe down Kealaikahiki. to try to show maybe it was a roadway. Now, you mentioned returning from Kahiki, it's also a path. When you guys do your research, you will find a place called Kealaikahiki. I'm not going to tell you where it is because you guys got to go find it yourself. And in my discussions with people like Homer Hayes, Dr. Ani from Kona, John Akana from Kauai, and my dad was a sea captain. We thought that it just did not mean coming back from Kahiki, Kealaikahiki. If you literally translate it, it says it's sort of coming back home, right? These older minds thought that it really meant the continuing path to Tahiti. And if you've been out there and sailed south, then you can understand that this was certainly a possibility. Anyway, I put together this project, not to say Ben Finney was wrong, because it was a fantastic thing to come up with in the first place. I just think that there was more that he could have added to the whole project. So I put together this proposal to take Hokulea in 1977 down Kealaikahiki and go south of Alenuihaha and Kalai, the South Point, and intersect the original track of Hokulea, which went north of Maui and Hawaii. So I put together a team. Nainoa was our navigator. My brother was this guy. My brother's a retired sea captain too from Matson. And David Lyman was a captain on the canoe for that trip. We had Leon Sterling, John Cruz from Kauai, Sam Kalala. We had some really awesome people on that canoe. And so I took it to my boss at Kamehameha as a Kamehameha project. And he said, sounds like a damn good idea. So he says, how much is it going to cost? I said, oh, probably about $500. And he says, $500? I said, yeah, because I got other backers outside who want us to do it. So we were able to put this project together via Kamehameha for $500 and we couldn't land on Kaho'olawe because it was still under the jurisdiction of the U.S. Navy and the bombing. But you had this skinny guy who was a naval officer in the control of shipping on Ford Island at Com 3rd Fleet, and he was a pretty good friend of this Admiral Greeley, who was a Popolo admiral. And we got along really fine because he would say, my son played those Kamehameha kids, and he got his Okole kick. So that was the relationship between Admiral Greeley and myself. So I also took this proposal from Kamehameha to Admiral Greeley. I said, we would like to try to do this project. And he was for it 100%. He said, you can't land and you can't go within so many miles of the island. But certainly from Lanai, you can sail towards into the Alenuihaha and then down to the point and then do what you gotta do.
I want to ask you to continue that story after we have a chance to pull our evening together, because I think there's going to be a lot of folks who are going to want to talk to you and our panelists over some refreshments that we have ready for you. So why don't we just thank you very much for sharing, everyone, and Gordon and Pete on night on. What a real perfect way to bring all those thoughts and ideas together.
Well, just a big mahalo to Anakala Garden, to Herman P. Ikea, Snowbird Bento, Keao NeSmith, Kaleomanuiwa, and Kekaulike Mar. How about a big hand for all of our panelists today? I'm going to pass it over to Kage to close us out.
Mahalo e Laiana, mahalo e oko apau. As is tradition, we end with Hawaii Aloha. We'll have refreshments after. We have more time to finish that beautiful mo'olelo from Uncle Gordon, as well as a panelist to share now. Let's get into the circle the way our kupuna taught us and sing these beautiful words expressing our aloha aina, Hawaii Aloha. took me one of the rare opportunities to have cookies and ava at the same time. Makaukau, pa'alima, hibeni kako. Te Hawaii e mua te hanaue. Kuhone, kulani mine. Orino awina pono lalio. Te Hawaii aloha e. E hapoi e ngā hoki o Hawaii ne. Keri oli e. Oli e. Mai ngā ahe makani e pāmai nei. Mau ke aloha, aloha Hawaii. E haoli. E haoli e ngā hoki o Hawaii nei. Oli e. Oli e. Mai ngā ahe makani e pāmai nei. Mau ke aloha, aloha Hawaii. Mau ke aloha, aloha Hawaii. Lono i ka makahiki. O ia mahalo.